Welcome to the Outlier's Journey, where we'll explore the human stories of inspiring paths to success in both the African American and Caribbean immigrant communities. My name is John Seaton, and I've always been fascinated with folks who manage to break away from their circumstance and somehow achieve more than their peers. So in our discussion today, we'll uncover those turning points in our guests' lives so that we might enlighten and inspire others, especially those listening that may find themselves in a similar circumstance. So let's get started. Today, I want to welcome Iaishia Smith to the podcast. Iaishia grew up in the Alabama housing projects in Paterson, New Jersey in the 80s and 90s. It was no doubt a tough place. Iaishia shared a newspaper article of her that was written when she was about 17 years old, and it mentioned the fact that there were 7 people shot and 1 person killed in a very short period of time where she lived. So that just gives you a sense of the odds that Iaishia had to deal with. She went to Eastside High, and so many of you out there might remember the movie Lean on Me with Principal Joe Clark. So obviously that was a tough place to go as well. Today, we want to explore Iaishia's journey from the projects of Paterson to being an African-American woman in tech at Cisco Systems with a family living in the suburbs of New Jersey. And with that, I'd like to welcome Iaishia to the podcast. So Iaishia, welcome.
Thank you, John, and thank you for having me. I appreciate that very nice intro.
I'm very excited to talk with you today. You're the third in my set of podcasts and the first woman in my podcast. So I'm really excited to hear your story and share it with everyone who's listening. I always like to start out with my guests telling us a little bit about themselves so we get a sense of where you are today from a work family perspective so that we can compare it from where things started in your life and get a sense of your journey. So could you tell us a little bit about yourself, work, family, and your situation?
Sure, absolutely. So I am a wife to my lovely husband of 6 years and a mother to my son, MJ. And I have another daughter shining down on us in heaven. And I am an engineering project manager at Cisco, where I manage the development and delivery of software features for our collaboration products at Cisco. So full life, being a mom, a wife, and a professional. When I'm not at Cisco, I am also a realtor. So I work with first-time home buyers to realize their dream to become homeowners. So very busy life here in New Jersey, but a balanced life, a really good life that I'm grateful for. And it's been a good journey for me. So I'm blessed.
In terms of success, right? When you think about success, a family, a good job, health, I think you've achieved a level of success that a lot of people would desire. And knowing you for the short time that I've known you, Iaishia, I know that the journey's not over. You're just beginning on that path. But it's great to see and hear where you are today. And that's what we wanted to share with folks in our discussion is, where things began and how you managed to get where you are. And maybe we check back in 20 years for the next part of your journey.
Yes, that would be great. Absolutely. So for me, success is more about freedom to live the lifestyle, freedom to make choices for myself and my family that provides us with the things that bring us joy. So that's this journey that I'm on to success. It's not a destination or a period. It's just this journey for freedom and peace and happiness, for myself and my family.
I love the way you put that in terms of freedom, because people define success in different ways. And maybe they think maybe it's about money, maybe it's about, material things. But I think freedom is a good way to put it so that you can determine what makes you happy and go after those things that do. I want to go back to the beginning where your journey began. So tell us a little bit about where you grew up.
Sure. So I was born and raised in the great city of Paterson, New Jersey. My family, both my mother and my father, lived in Paterson, went to school in Paterson. My family, most of my family came from the South, relocated to Paterson, and I grew up there. So at around 7 years old, we moved to the projects, to Alabama projects. If you're from Paterson, people call it the dog pound. But we lived in the projects. My mom and my dad separated when I was young, and my mom moved to the projects, and I would spend the week with my mom and the weekends with my dad or with my grandmother. But we lived there in a high-rise building. I lived on the 7th floor in a building that went up to the 8th floor, and the elevator many times was not working. So we would run up this 7 flights of stairs daily. And then we lived on the 7th floor for maybe 6 years. And then we moved downstairs to the 4th floor, which was a shorter walk up. But we spent most of our time from 2nd grade, so from about 7 years old until I graduated high school, living in the Alabama projects.
Wow. So what was it like there? What was the environment like? Did you go out and play, or what was that experience like for you?
It was tough. I mean, you live in a project. There were 14 buildings, 5 high-rise buildings, all that went to like the 8th floor, maybe 10 apartments on each floor. And then there were low-rise buildings that went from building 6 on to building 14. So it was a predominantly Black and African-American community. Very little, I mean, there were Latinos there as well, but mostly Black folks living in the projects. My mom was a very hard worker. She always worked 2 jobs to provide for myself and my younger brother. And even though we lived in a project, she always instilled in us the importance of having a work ethic, working hard, and getting out of the projects. That was always her goal and her motivation, because it was rough. You had people dealing drugs. You had, as you mentioned at the start of the interview, there were killings, shootings. We would hear it, daily. There were fights. It was a rough place. Many people living in poverty, not seeing a way out for themselves. You have generations after generations living in that environment. It was tough living there, but I learned so much there, seeing the experiences of so many different people, the cycle sometimes, that you get caught in of not being able to get out, and then seeing others being able to get out. And that was always my mom's goal, was for us to be there temporary and get out. And once we were able to leave, it was a huge accomplishment for my mom.
Yeah,
but my mom knew that she didn't want us, my brother and I, to get caught up in that. So she was very strict. She would not let us hang out. People were selling drugs. There were, people hanging out in the hallways and on the streets. And my mom just didn't allow us to do that. So from Monday to Friday, went to school, came back in the house, and we were in the house. And on the weekends, we went to our fathers or to our grandparents on the weekends.
Given that she worked 2 jobs, how did she even enforce that with you guys?
My mom was very strict and very disciplined. So, she was straight. You didn't mess around. You understood. She instilled in us very early to follow the rules, to listen, because there would be consequences. So we did that. We went to school. She would always leave us notes because she worked in the evening. She would leave us notes, prepare our dinners. She would check in on us, making sure that we were well. But she worked hard so that we didn't, we didn't have much at all, but we never went without food. We always had, the good things, nice clothes. We always had things because she worked so hard. And she would always say, I want you to focus on school. Your job is doing well in school, and let me handle the rest. Let your parents handle the rest. She was strict, and we followed, and she trusted us. She trusted me to do the right thing. And she talked to us about the importance, myself and my brother, about her motivations and her desires to get out of the projects.
So you talk about being strict. I remember my dad, when I was growing up, all he had to do was give us the look. We used to call it the look, and we knew that you didn't want to not do what he suggested was the right or wrong thing to do. So I can certainly relate to a strict parent from that perspective. And the focus on education, I told this in some of my previous podcasts. My father always used to tell me that education is the only thing that they can't take away from you, right? So once you have it, it's sort of your ticket out. And one of the things that I think is important to note is that a lot of times people have this view of the projects and that everybody in the projects is there because, you know, they're criminals or they're bad. But there's tons of people who find themselves in situations that are bad and they're looking for ways to get out. So it sounds like that's the situation that your family was in, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I believe that, like, just because you live in the projects does not define who you are as an individual and how you live your life. And my mom was very clear on that, you know, on that point for my brother and I. We ended up there through some unfortunate circumstances. But just because we lived in the projects didn't mean that we had to act out some of the stereotypes that people have or assumptions that people have about individuals that are living in the projects. We lived in a very clean household. My mom was strict. You know, my mom is a Christian woman, and she believed cleanliness is next to godliness, right? So her house was always clean. You didn't go to bed with dishes in the sink. You cleaned you made your bed every day. She was very disciplined, hardworking. As I mentioned, she worked 2 jobs. When I think about a work ethic, I think about my mom because her work ethic is unmatched. I mean, even when she didn't have to work on the weekends, she would be up at 5 a.m. doing the laundry, cleaning up. By noon, everything is done. Laundry, house is clean. I mean, she's relaxing for the rest of the day. So she was not lazy. She did not conform to any of the stereotypes that people say about those that grow up in the projects. And she's not the only one. I know so many people that live in the projects where we lived, and their focus was to get out, to provide a better life for themselves and their children. And my mom was definitely that woman, and she instilled that in us very early on. This is not the end for us. This is part of our journey, but we're going on. And when she did when we did move out of the projects, it was a huge accomplishment for her because I saw how hard and how tireless she worked for us and how she sacrificed and she provided a shelter for us so that we had a safe space. And we understood that there was more for us out there in the world. And I realized that there was something inside of me as a young child that I wanted to go to college and I wanted to own my own house. That was my goal as a child in elementary school. And I just worked towards that. That was just always inside of me.
Yeah. Now, did your mother go to college?
No, my mom did not go to college. I'm a first generation college graduate. My mom worked in healthcare. She was a nurse's aide, and then she moved into dietary. My father was a driver for ADP. Now, this is in the 80s where people didn't have direct deposit and they would get their paper check. And my dad worked at ADP delivering checks all throughout the city.
Oh, wow.
And then he went to work at Toshiba, where he was installing copiers and printers in businesses. And I saw both of them working hard, very hard, waking up early in the morning, reading the newspaper, just having a routine in their lives. And a lot of that I learned from my parents, and I do it today. And I'm grateful for their examples of hard work.
So it sounds like even though your mother didn't go to college, she found herself in a situation that she wanted to get out of. She obviously had an escape plan, and that's what we want to get through is what her escape plan was. And fortunately, she instilled into you values that have boded well for you as you gone through your journey. So it sounds like your mother rubbed off in all the best ways on you. So let's explore that a little bit. And I think the first part of her escape plan was elementary school, and which one you went to, correct?
Oh, absolutely. So I could hear my mom's voice very clearly talking about values and respect and morals. My mom used to tell us three things every day. I want you to love God, respect others, and do your very best.
Wow.
And I could hear her today saying that, to me as a child. And and she did her best. So living in the projects, there were two elementary schools that children who lived at this address and had this zip code went to. But my mom, knowing the challenges that we faced living in the projects, she petitioned the public school for me to go to a different elementary school, and she won that petition through the Board of Education, and I was able to go to a different school, Martin Luther King School. And this was outside of our district, with the expectation that I would do well at school. And I did, right? I understood that my mom sacrificed for me to get to the school, and I wanted to do well so that I can stay in the school and have a good opportunity. And that really started me on a path of success. I went to Martin Luther King. There were other students from the projects who also got special permission to attend, but very, very few. And I'm grateful for having the option to go to a different school because I was in a smaller class setting.
Mm-hmm.
I was with, different students, different kids, and I was with teachers that really loved teaching and doing their jobs. And I met some incredible teachers that set me off onto a good path. Now, I started Martin Luther King at second grade, and there I met one teacher I'll never forget, Black woman. She was young. She was my English teacher. She was in a sorority. She was so stylish. She was just everything I wanted in my life. She had recently graduated college, and she was giving back to her community as a teacher. And at that time in second grade, I wanted to become a teacher. I always thought I wanted to be a teacher. I always played teacher in school with my cousins. So it was just perfect seeing her, Miss Taylor, as this, she became a role model for me. And she created this small group called Homegirls Only for some of her students. And she would, hold us back after school and talk to us about, college and, just all different things that a young girl, impressionable girl, questions that you would have for your teacher. And she taught, she was very honest and upfront with us. And it was great to be able to see a young Black teacher, because for me, representation matters. And she was a representation of what I could become. And that was incredible. That was so valuable to me.
Yeah, it goes back to that saying, and I said this in the previous podcast, that if you can see it, you can be it, right?
Right.
If you're in an environment and you don't have access to role models and all you have access to is negativity, then that's the path that you will most likely follow, right? So it's so important to have those people in your life and to have those role models at school or at church or whatever organization you may belong to show you that there's more than your circumstance. So that's a common theme that I'm seeing in all of these conversations that I'm having. It's so important to have children exposed to things that they can become, right? And so that it sounds like that was your first step in that teacher showing you that, hey, there's another world out there, reinforcing what your mother's been telling you, right?
Yes. And you're right. She was representation of that. And she was encouraging. She told us, like, yes, go to college. You need to go to college. You are capable of doing the work in college. And that really just gave me the confirmation that I needed. Like, I'm going to college. And that was my motivation. Like, I'm going to college. I'm going to graduate. I'm going to move out of the projects. I'm going to buy a house. I'm going to have a good life for myself. And, where some kids, for them, they don't see it. They don't have someone encouraging them. I had my mom, I had my teachers. So I felt like I had everything I needed to be successful and to achieve my goal.
Yeah, it's so important. There was a podcast that I listened to from Malcolm Gladwell where he talked about Brown versus the Board of Education. And so while it was great that students were integrated, the fact that teachers weren't integrated was a big gap in what was done. So you had African American students that were bused from their neighborhood to a white school, but then those teachers didn't reinforce or understand or encourage the Black kids as much as your teacher encouraged you. So that was a big gap. So it sounds like the fact that you went to Martin Luther King High School, there were faculty that believed in the students and pushed them and told them that they can do better, right?
Oh, yeah. And Miss Taylor was just one of the Black teachers at Martin Luther King Elementary that was instrumental in my growth and development. There were many. When I think about my history teacher and how he was so fascinating because here he is, he's a Black man, my history teacher, and his family lived in the projects. And they were also people who were highly motivated, like my mom, to move out. And he had, his sister that lived there and his niece, and to see her as a businesswoman moving out of the projects and living a life, it was capable. We were capable. It was possible to move out and that just because you lived in the projects, you didn't have to, behave in certain ways that people automatically assume you would.
Right.
So it was great to have, Black teachers who poured into me and supported me and encouraged me. Even when it came time for high school, they were, my elementary school teachers were helpful in helping me to decide what high school I was going to go to. Was I going to go to a vocational school or the school? Paterson had at the time just 3 high schools. There was either East Side High School, which was for students who lived sort of on the east side of the city. There was John F. Kennedy High School, which was, students who lived like down the hill in the north portion of the city. They went to John F. K. And then there was a performing arts school for other students who was interested in the arts. So there wasn't very many options for me in terms of high school. There was also a vocational school that was in the county, but you had to be bused there. I ended up going to Eastside High School. And at first I was concerned. I was like, oh, can I make it at Eastside?
Was that by choice that you went there?
Yeah, by choice. I went there by choice. My mom had gone to school there. My dad went to school there. So a lot of my family had all gone to school there. And of course, I had heard about, the fights and, kids having issues. But I knew that I was there to learn, to get an education, that this was another point in my career, my academic career, to get me to college. And I knew that my mom expected me to go to school every day. So there was no opportunity for me to miss class, and that I needed to bring home good grades. And my mom instilled that in us. Even as when I was in elementary school, I did very well. I was so hard on myself. I would get A's and B's. I'd be on the honor roll. I remember one time in 7th grade, I got a C.
Uh-oh.
I cried like never before. I was crying. I stayed after school. I asked my teacher, how did I get a C? Can I do extra work? I was devastated. And I came home. I had to go home, tell my mom that I got a C. And I was expecting her to be so upset. And she wasn't even upset because she saw how upset I was, that I had let myself down, that I hadn't performed to my best abilities. But that set a fire in me. I went back to school motivated more than ever. And I turned that C into an A. And that was my only C in elementary school because I knew that was just unacceptable for myself.
Yeah, it's funny. So hard. Yeah, it's funny. I went through the same thing where I got something less than an A once, and I was like, what can I do to change this back into an A? So yeah. we both had similar views on grades in elementary school. I think both driven by our parents' expectations. So you're at Eastside High now. The good thing is, it sounds like you had family there. There's legacy, right? Teachers sort of know you from that, but that's all good But I still have to imagine there were other people who, didn't have the same eye on the prize that you did that could be of negative influence. How did you navigate all of that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, at any high school, there are people that are there to get their education and to do well, and there are some that are there to hang out. And you experience that. So there were certainly, friends of mine and associates of mine that weren't as focused on their education as I was. But again, my mom was so strict and she did not accept bad grades. I knew I couldn't miss class or cut school because that would be totally unacceptable. And I also had, in the inside of me, this desire, as I mentioned, to just do well, to do my best. It brought me so much joy to see my name in the little hallway under, National Honor Society or honor roll. So I did my best. But I had some friends that, cut class and, I remember, back in the day, there were when the new releases of sneakers would come out, Jordans, people would cut school and go downtown and, get their sneakers. That was not my story, because if my mom found out that I cut class to buy sneakers, there would be a consequence. So I didn't do that. And I tried to stay away from that because I understood that their desires weren't my desires and that their ambitions in school weren't mine. And I needed to be focused on going to college. And I did that. And then the other thing, when you talk about a network of people, when I lived in the projects at around 14 years old, I got my working papers and I was able to get a job. I was so excited. And in the summer, I worked at this recreation center, which was in the projects. And there was this man, he's a legend in Paterson, just a complete amazing public service, Mr. Moody. He led the recreation program, and he was one of the leaders, the managers of the rec, and I worked there. And he was also the president of the Paterson Board of Education. And I remember him saying, "Where are you going to high school?" I said, "I'm going to East Side." And he's like, "I'm in East Side every day. I'm going to be checking on you, making sure you're doing good." So I knew that I had people, in addition to my mom, Mr. Moody knew who I was. He knew my mom. He would check in on me. There were teachers of mine who were friends of my dad and my mom and my aunts. And they would say, they knew Iaishia Jacobs. They knew that name Jacobs. And they would say, "I know your dad. I know your mom." So I didn't have room to fool around, because there were people who, if they saw me out of line doing something, they would check me.
That's the village raising a child, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would be nothing and nowhere without my village, my family, my blood family, and my extended family, the people who loved on me and poured into me when I didn't even know what I was doing. They supported me, and I'm extremely grateful for them.
Now, didn't you also have, I call him the Jamaican angel that was looking out for you?
All the time. All the time. I had a math teacher who did not play. If he saw me, I remember one time one of my girlfriends and I'm still friends with her, she was older than I am. And she used to hang out in the hallway, and she had a little reputation. She would cut class every here and there. And one day he saw me in the hallway hanging out with her, and he had no problems embarrassing me. "Iaishia," and he pulled me over. I was like, "Yes." And he's like, "I better not see you hanging out with her anymore." And I'm like, "She's standing right here. I don't care. You need to, you are going places. And if I have to call your mother, I will. I better not see it again." And I knew right then and there that I needed to straighten up and fly right, because I did not want him calling home and telling my mom that I was not doing the right thing. And he would look out for me, and he would, he was hard on me. And I used to, in the beginning, I'm like, "Why is he so hard on me?" And he said, "I see something in you. There's something in you. And I'm going to make sure that you do live up to your potential." And I'm grateful. At the time it was annoying. I used to see him and run and hide, but he was in my corner, and I'm grateful for him, because some teachers don't have to do that, right?
They don't. Yeah.
And he did that for me, and I'm grateful.
Yeah. That's such a common theme that I've been hearing in these conversations, that this a multitude of people, right? But there's that either the community or an individual sees or recognizes something in you, and they want to protect that,
Yeah.
right? And so if you're willing to receive that, then that's a great thing. So, okay, so we've been through elementary school. Your mother took the time, make sure that you got into Martin Luther King, and you did well there. You had the support of Legacy in Eastside High, and you had, I call him the Jamaican angel looking out for you. You had Mr. Moody looking out for you. So you said your eyes were on the prize. You knew you wanted to go to college from that teacher that gave you that example. So what was that whole college admission process like for you?
Again, it was the village. So my high school had this program called School Base, and they were a program based inside of Eastside, and they provided students with an opportunity to tour colleges. They provided vouchers for college applications. They had tutors there helping with your college essays. They really supported students who wanted to go to college. Now, this was a big thing for me because we would get recruiters in from the military and from the, different vocational schools, but I was focused on college. So school base was really a saving grace for me because they provided me with the resources to explore schools and to fund my college applications. Mm-hmm. And I did that. So even with SAT, they also helped with, they helped with SAT prep, and it was just a wonderful program that was supportive of students who wanted to go to college. So I went to a couple of top college tours, and I started to apply. So I applied to all of, my safe schools, Montclair, all these schools that I was saying, okay, these are my safe schools. Ideally, I wanted to go to Spelman. I wanted to go to the HBCU. I wanted to be on an all women's campus. I wanted to be able to just experience, being at a Black college. So I applied to Spelman. I got accepted. But the tuition, we didn't have funding. We didn't have money to go to college. I would be there only on, the little scholarships that I received or loans.
Right.
And that was a big decision for me. I was crushed because I really wanted that experience. And then again, another teacher of mine at Eastside, I had gotten accepted to Rutgers University, and I applied to Douglas College, which is an all-women's college here in New Jersey. And she said, give Rutgers a chance. Give Rutgers Douglas College a chance. She said, my daughter goes to school there. She loves it. The atmosphere that you're describing, about women leadership, I think you'll find that there at Rutgers, at Douglas College specifically. And one Saturday, she said, I want to bring you down to Rutgers, and I want you to introduce you to my daughter and take you on campus and really give you an opportunity to see the school. And I think, it's not a predominantly Black school, but you'll get that same experience of women leadership at Douglas. And she did that. She took me down, met her daughter. We toured the campus. She took me to class with her. It was fantastic. And that's where I ended up going. I ended up accepting, my admission to Rutgers Douglas College, and I became a Douglas woman. And I was, oh my goodness, John, I was so excited. I cried when I got accepted to schools, to college, because it was like, this is really happening. Yeah. I would wait we had to go in the back in the project. Your mailbox was like in another building, and I would go back there and wait and, open up the mailbox. And when I got an acceptance letter, I mean, it was like the best feeling ever. And I would read them at night and tell everybody. Yeah. It was like my dreams were being realized. And I was so excited about the future. So my senior year at Eastside, I'd done well at Eastside. I was like on the honor society. I was on honor roll. I graduated in the top like 25 of my class. So I did well. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you this. So my senior year, I was taking AP English classes, and if you did well and you had a certain GPA, you were a part of this program that allowed you to leave high school, end your school day at noon, and then you had a job in the evening. So I used to leave school around 12 o'clock, and I had a job, and I worked at the assistant superintendent's office for the Paterson Public Schools.
Okay.
And John, you couldn't tell me anything. I was doing well in high school. I was turning 17. On my 17th birthday, my grandmother bought me a car.
What?
Yes, a red 1989 Nissan Pulsar with the T-tops.
Okay. A T-top? Are you serious?
Yes, yes. And now I'm driving to school my senior year, leaving school at noon. I had a job. My job paid me $7.50 an hour. And this is in the year 2000.
That's
and
good
I
money.
had a car.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You couldn't tell me anything. I had arrived. Life was great. I had gotten all this acceptance to college. It was fantastic. And one of my girlfriends who also lived in the projects, super smart. She had gotten accepted to Syracuse. She was doing well. We both would leave school together. And I worked in the assistant superintendent's office. She worked in the superintendent's office. And there we met another friend who had gone to JFK, who was another high school in Paterson. She worked in another assistant superintendent's office. So the three of us were seniors. We're doing well in high school. We're going to college. We're making money. I mean, John, we had arrived. Life was
good. Life was good. You could.
Yes, it was amazing. And their friendship and their drive really motivated me as well, because we were on the same path. Yeah. And that was so encouraging for me, because I had other people, particularly my one friend who's now in my family. We're cousins now. She's married to my cousin. She lived in the same projects that I did, and she was on that same journey. So when you talk about having your village, they're a part of my village.
Yeah.
They help to keep me going and motivated.
And you become who you hang out with, right?
Yes.
You lift each other up. And that's such an important message. You can say, well, I hang out with these certain type of people, but I'm not like them.
Right.
Well, you might become like them, right?
That's right.
In these podcasts, I like to point out programs that help move a person along and give them that escape velocity. The fact that your mother didn't go to college, that program that gave you those nudges and helped you fill out college applications and pay for those applications and advise you, how important was that for the folks in Eastside High who were looking to go to college?
Oh, it was instrumental. Where else would we have gotten that opportunity to have our college applications paid for, tutor and mentorship for our applications, for our essays, touring schools, and we didn't pay a dime.
Yeah.
They provided everything. And it was an environment where you felt like, and I believed that Mr. Brown was rooting for Iaishia, that, the teachers that were there, they wanted to see me succeed. And it really was an atmosphere set up for us to grow, despite the challenges. Now, you're talking about Eastside High School, a school that had been, you saw the movie Lean on Me.
Yep.
Had its challenges. The public school had been taken over and run by the state of New Jersey for years, right? But these were people working in that school saying, despite the odds, we're going to give you the opportunity and set you up for success so that you can go out and achieve your goals. I mean, that was invaluable to me.
For anybody listening out there who's looking at public policy and funding of programs, I think that's something that certainly should be reinforced, that, these types of programs are very important to help folks escape their circumstance. I want to move along to Rutgers, right? So you talked to me about your first year at Rutgers as being a little bit of a culture shock, and maybe you didn't get all A's that first semester.
Definitely a culture shock. Definitely. So at Eastside, predominantly Black and Latino, right? My teachers were Black. Most of my teachers were Black. My network, all my friends were Black. And then I get to Rutgers, right? Where this is a large university where you have your classrooms in an auditorium, 250 people.
Yeah. Easy to get lost, right?
Oh my goodness, completely on your own. Talk about independence right now. I had pretty much been, I had a village of support. If I felt like there was a challenge, I had people I could reach out to. And I knew people knew me at Eastside. I didn't have that network there at Rutgers. And I was nervous. I was afraid. It really was a test. Like, each, do you have what it takes? And so I went on to Rutgers. My first year, you have this class. It's called Expository Writing 101. Now, I'm coming from Eastside. I'm in advanced AP English.
I
And I
don't
did.
even know what expository means, but go on.
So it's this 101 course, writing course, reading and writing comprehension course that every freshman at Rutgers has to pass. And you have to pass it with a C. And John, I got a D. So essentially, I failed the class. John, I was so crushed. Now, you hear me say I cried. If I got a bad grade, the waterworks just came and I cried. I was so ashamed. I was so embarrassed. I came home from my first semester winter break. I stalked the mailman every single day because I did not want my mom to get my report card or ask me about my report card. And I had to tell her that I failed this class because a D essentially was a fail because you had to get a C in order to pass it.
Yeah.
So I went home that semester with my head held low, and I tried to keep a low profile. And my mom was so used to me doing well that it came a point where she really wasn't like concerned about my grades because she knew that I was highly motivated and wanted to do well myself. And I'm very hard on myself. So for some reason she didn't, she was like, how did this semester go? I'm like, oh, it went good. I met friends. I gained weight. It's good. Never mentioning this grade. But I remember it's New Year's Eve. We always go to church on New Year's Eve. And my pastor was praying and he called everybody up for prayer. And I just went to the altar like if he called my name. And I just began to pray, Lord, I need your help in getting through college. If this is my goal, if this is my destiny, help me. And I'm going to do the work because we know that faith without works is dead. So I said, this is it. After that, altar call, went back to my seat and I held my mom's hand and I said, Mom, I'm going to graduate college. And it hasn't been easy, but I'm going to get there. And she was like, with just confidence, I know you got it.
Right,
You're going to do this. Yeah. Of course. So that was it for me. I went back my spring semester and I took I took expository writing. I signed up for a tutor. I went to every office hour.
There you go.
I met in the student center. I was like, I got to pass this course and, hard work. I passed it, but it was not easy.
Yeah. So you had to overcome that challenge. You found a way through faith to overcome that challenge.
Yeah. Absolutely. I had to, because I said, I'm not going to let this one course derail my whole plan. Right. And at one point I was questioning, like, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I don't have what it takes to do well here at this school. And there were other people in the class that, had passed. And I'm like, how could this happen to me? But I knew that I had to do the work and there was more work to be done. And that's what I did. I went about my business of working hard to understand expository writing and how they expected me to write these essays. And I did it.
Yeah. College is where you discover your gaps, right? So, that you don't know you have, compared with other folks who have other gaps, right? That's the whole thing where you go into college, they say, especially in engineering programs, look to your left, look to your right.
Yes.
One of you guys won't be here. The initial conversations I've had with others on this overall journey is, there's a common theme. First year, it's tough, right? One of the conversations I had with Aaron Moore, his first year, he failed out and he had to find a way second year to come back. Conversation I had with Flo, he talked about the fact, first year was cool, but you know what? I got a little overconfident. And second year is when he had a problem. So it all depends. I think the bottom line theme here is there will be a challenge in college, and you have to find a way to get through that and continue on the journey. All right. So it sounds like you conquered what you had to conquer at Rutgers, but I think when we spoke, there was a little bit of a switch of a major from one to another.
Oh,
What
yeah.
happened
So
there?
I told you I wanted to be a teacher. I always wanted to be a teacher. I just love teaching. So I became a substitute teacher my junior year. I became a substitute teacher and I did that for a couple months and that just solidified it for me. I no longer wanted to be a teacher. The job is so demanding, so tough. I have so much respect and admiration for teachers, but I realized that that was not where I was able to thrive. And I realized that that was not uh, where I wanted to be. And there was other ways to give back and
Yeah.
to teach, right? There were other opportunities. So I changed majors. I started to do human resource management. So I went switch schools because at Rutgers they have all different schools. Like so, I was a part of the School of Education, and I moved to the School of Labor Relations
Hmm.
and Management, and that's where I ended up getting my degree in. And today, still not working in any HR department, but enjoying the work that I'm doing.
Yeah, and you ultimately ended up in tech. And
Yes.
what I think the lesson there is, a lot of students who go to college aren't really sure of what their major should be. And a lot choose a major thinking that that's what they'll do when they graduate. I remember going to do a school visit with my son when he was looking to go to college. And one of the faculty asked the parents, who are all sitting in the office, are you working in the field that you graduated, the degree you graduated in college with? And maybe 20% raise their hand, right? So it's important that when you do go to college, and I love what you did, you had a chance to test it out before you went the 4 years and got your degree and then realized that's not what you really wanted to do. But even that, Iaishia, you didn't end up doing labor studies anyway. You ended up in tech. So let's talk about what happens after you graduate and how you start to navigate the job market. What challenges did you face there?
So you're right. Being flexible and being open. I feel like sometimes when people graduate with a certain degree, they feel like they have to get a job in that field. But being flexible and being open, and I had to do that. So I wasn't really sure where what I wanted to do. So, but I knew that I needed to make money, and I knew that I wanted to be able to provide a life for myself. So I took a job working in an accounting and financial services firm. And I said, you know what, this is the highest, because at first I was like, I'm just going to get the highest paying job that I could. So this was the highest paying job that I could find. I got the job. I said, this is just a temporary stop. I'm going to work here for, a couple years, 2 years. So, get some experience, because everybody's looking for experience. You get out of college and they're like, well, how much experience do you have? You have no experience. So I said, let me get something that gives me some experience, some things I can put on my resume, and then I'll move on. So I worked at this financial services firm longer than I anticipated, but I learned a great deal of what it means to be a professional, how to show up at work. Now, this was a different environment for me because my parents, my mom worked in healthcare. My dad was a driver. He was installing copiers and printers and fax machines at that time. So I didn't have anyone in my family who had navigated sort of like corporate America and
Yeah,
worked in the office setting.
no
So
white collar jobs. Yeah.
no white collar jobs at all. So I had to understand and learn all of the politics around that. And I'm grateful for the experience that I had working at that firm because it really taught me what it means to be a professional and how I want to show up at work and what my brand and my image is and how, to interact. And then this whole, idea of being a Black woman at a firm. Now, I worked at this firm. I was the only Black person at the firm. And this is in a predominantly white, wealthy area.
Mm.
Now, that's another challenge, right? Yeah. Navigating that.
Yeah.
So this role really helped me to learn about myself. It helped me learn what I wanted to do and what I wouldn't accept. So it really taught me a lot. And it wasn't the ideal job for me. And I realized in that role that I had more to contribute than I was already contributing. And then I started to look for a job, and I said, you know what? I want to do something that's meaningful, work that makes a difference. And I said, I don't care if I have to start at the bottom. I'm just going to start.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to work my way up. So I applied to the role at Cisco, and I worked for a fantastic manager, leader, Jonathan Rosenberg. And I started out as his executive assistant. And he is the author of SIP. I went to work for him as his executive assistant, and what an amazing opportunity. So when I say to people, be flexible, that's what I mean. For me, this role was an executive assistant role. So you think, oh, you're booking his calendar, you're booking travel. Yeah, I did that. But there was so much more for me in that role. I learned. I had a front row seat at a senior executive, a brilliant man, fantastic person, family man who, again, became a part of my village because he poured into me. He challenged me. He had me working on things far outside of the admin roles and responsibilities. And that role exposed me to so much on tech, so much in collaboration. I'm going to customer meetings. I was able to travel, and really have a front row seat to run, front row seat to an executive running a whole collaboration business, which was fantastic. And that was another opportunity that had I not been open, I would have missed. So that was my introduction. Working for Jonathan was my introduction to tech. And he gave me the opportunity and I seized it. I said, I'm going to make this into something much more than just, an admin role. I'm going to learn as much as I can. And I did. And from there, that's where my career took off.
Yeah, that to me, that's an amazing story because it's one of those things that are unpredictable, right? And you knew teaching wasn't for you. You took what you needed to take out of that first job at that firm you worked for, and then had the initiative to say, hey, look, I need a little bit more. I'm going to go out and wherever the river takes me, I'm going to hop on. And you ended up at Cisco, and it's been an amazing ride for you ever since. Women in tech is needed so much more than the number of folks that are involved in it right now. And so the fact that you're in it, I think is an amazing thing. Right?
Oh, it is truly amazing to work at Cisco, a leader in technology, having all of the opportunities for so many people, particularly people from Paterson, people in inner cities that don't have the exposure. I always say people just need the opportunity, right? Yeah. And I am grateful for the opportunity because a lot of times when you come from places like where I grew up at, you're going to learn how to figure it out, right? You're going to work hard. You're going to be motivated. You're going to figure it out. And for me, being in tech was an opportunity that I had to figure out for myself, and I did. And I'm in an environment where I'm growing, where I'm developing both personally and professionally.
Yeah. So I couldn't leave this podcast without mentioning one area where you also involved with and showing leadership, because another critical part of your journey is your advocacy around making people aware of the disparity of care of African American women. And you're also the global leader for the Diabetes Network, the employee resource group at Cisco. Can you tell me a little bit about your motivation of your advocacy around these two causes?
Yes, absolutely. So this is work that is really my heart work. This is work that I would do whether I'm paid or not paid, right? So my journey with diabetes began with through a pregnancy. My husband and I were expecting our first child together. We were super excited. We had just got married, bought a new house, and I found out that I was pregnant. We were over the moon, and the pregnancy, went well, and we were excited. And at around 38 weeks and 5 days pregnant, I went to the doctor for my normal routine doctor's appointment. and my baby didn't have a heartbeat. The doctor tried and tried, and she couldn't find heartbeat, and I was crushed.
Yeah.
I was devastated. My husband was devastated. It was hard.
Yeah.
Because we were anticipating her life, and in just a second, it was like, she's no longer here. And we, through that experience, I just was thinking to myself, my goodness, how could this happen? Why is this happening to me? And so my daughter passed away. She was stillborn. She was 8 pounds and 8 ounces, otherwise healthy, no other issues.
Wow.
Yeah, she was beautiful. My goodness, she full hair. She was gorgeous, but we never got a chance to see her eyes open. We were crushed. And I had an emergency C-section, and then 7 days later we had a private funeral for her, and it was a hard situation. And again, your village, right? So I'm working here at Cisco when, during this time. And I remember calling Jonathan and saying, Jonathan, I had lost a baby, and he was so supportive. And he said, listen, don't worry about anything. You take the time that you need, you get yourself better. Don't worry about work. You'll be fine. And, work can wait. So I took 2 months off, get myself healthy, mentally, spiritually. I went to counseling, something in the Black community that we don't typically do, but I knew that I was in a bad place and I needed to get counseling, and I did that. And then through the support of my husband, my goodness, my husband, my mom, my church family, they really supported me, uplifted me during this period. And once I, had gotten myself relatively healed, I said I wanted to get answers. I wanted to understand what happened to me. I had otherwise been healthy. I had no issues, no complications. I wanted to understand. So I went to Rutgers, back to my alma mater, and I worked with a doctor there to assess my medical records from my pregnancy and from my delivery. And based on that, I believe that I had undiagnosed gestational diabetes. So I wasn't treated for it, and I wasn't diagnosed with it throughout the pregnancy, but I had all the signs and symptoms: swollen feet,
right,
thirsty, all of the signs. And when I brought these concerns to my doctor during pregnancy, there were times I would ask her, hey, my feet are so swollen, I'm so thirsty. She would, dismiss those as, normal pregnancy things. So I continued on to the pregnancy until, the day that we went to the doctor, and we were told that she had passed away.
Wow.
And it was crushing. It was devastating. So, armed with the information that I had received from, the second opinion and all my medical records, I said, the next time around that we try to expand our family and to grow our family, that I'm going to approach pregnancy in a different way. Just as I am as a program manager here at Cisco, I'm very detailed. I've asked questions. I'm very much involved. I knew that I had to approach pregnancy with the same attitude, the same approach.
You got to advocate for yourself, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So in 2018, I found out Christmas Eve, I found out I was pregnant. My husband and I were excited, but we were cautious. We were very cautious. So at about 15 weeks pregnant, I was getting ready to travel to Australia. So I went to my doctor. I was traveling to Australia for a business trip, and I went to my doctor before because I wanted to make sure that it was safe for me to make the trip to Australia. It was a long trip. So normal doctor's visit. And I noticed 2 days later, based on the test results, that there was glucose in my urine. And I immediately called my doctor and I said, listen, I got the results from my lab work. It shows that I have glucose in my urine. Does this mean I have gestational diabetes? Now, my doctor at the time was a part of a group practice. So he said, his partners said, Iaishia, I wouldn't worry about it. It's early in pregnancy. And I said, no. I'd like to get tested for gestational diabetes now. Now, typically in the U.S., women aren't tested for gestational diabetes until about 25 weeks. I'm at 15 weeks.
Yeah. So
I would have gone another 10 weeks, 9 or 10 weeks or so, not knowing what my blood sugars were. So I pushed. My doctor called me back and he said, yes, we'll get you tested. And sure enough, as I expected, my blood sugar was through the roof. It was so high. Typically, they'll send you for a second round of testing, but it was so high. He said, we're just going to begin treating it now at 15 weeks. And I'm grateful that I was an active participant in my own healthcare, that I was checking the lab work and asking questions and monitoring from that period on 15 weeks until my son was delivered at 38 weeks. Thank God, healthy, whole, looking just like his sister.
That's fantastic.
Yes, he was 6 pounds and 12 ounces because we had done all of the work. I had gotten treated for gestational diabetes and I was managing it well, and I had a different result. And that was only because I was my own advocate. I went to my doctor with questions. If there were concerns that I had, things that I didn't understand, I asked the question, right? I understood that my healthcare was my responsibility. And while I relied on the doctors to give us advice, because they're the medical experts, my opinion also mattered, that I wanted to have my voice heard and that it was important for me to raise my voice and my concerns throughout the entire process. So that was key for me. And I did that. And I believe that my son was born healthy and whole because of that, because I was my own advocate. And I encourage all women, everyone, no matter what you're going through, if you have to work with doctors that you trust, and you have to use your voice and speak up and be your own advocate because your life depends on it. In my case, my son's life depended on it. And I had a different approach to it. So I went about that pregnancy the same way I do in business, being very detailed and asking the questions. And I knew that as a Black woman pregnant with gestational diabetes, that I was at an increased risk of getting diabetes in my life. And sure enough, 9 months after delivering my son, May 2020, I'm not feeling well. I lost like 14 pounds. I'm not sure what was happening. It's in the midst of COVID, so I'm thinking maybe I have COVID.
Yeah, it's not that long ago. Yeah.
Right. I'm thinking maybe I have COVID, and I get tested COVID negative. I was breastfeeding, so I was thinking maybe I need to get a mammogram. Maybe it's breast cancer, negative. And something just dawned on me, check your blood sugar, because I'd already had all the tools and all the things from my pregnancy, and I checked my blood sugar and it was elevated, 400.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
So my doctor admits me into the hospital. I'm diagnosed with diabetic ketoacidosis and I'm in intensive care.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. I have a little baby at home. My son is at home. My husband's, taking care of my son. We're in a pandemic. And again, my faith, just praying, God, get me through.
Talk about a turn in the journey, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And I made it through that, was later diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Now, African-American Black folk are like 5% of the population that have type 1 diabetes. So typically, if somebody is diagnosed with diabetes, they automatically assume it's type 2 diabetes. Now, that happened to me. But again, being my own advocate, I worked with a nutritionist and she just noticed like something just wasn't right, consistent with a type 2 diabetic. I got additional screening and was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And today, I'm thriving with type 1 diabetes. I live well. I'm working as a professional, leading a whole employee resource group dedicated to uplifting and encouraging others living with diabetes, because just because I have this diagnosis doesn't mean that my opportunity or window for success has shortened or shrunk in any way. I'm encouraging others to thrive, to live, and because that's what I'm doing, right? And I'm doing that with the help of technology. So I manage my diabetes through technology. I use Bluetooth and Wi-Fi to connect, to always have an accurate depiction of where my blood sugars are today. And I felt it was so important for me to give back, because I didn't have, when I was diagnosed, no one in my family has diabetes. So when I was diagnosed, I didn't have a resource group to pull from.
Yeah, no blueprint for what you should do.
No blueprint, none. But I turned to Cisco and I just searched, diabetes, and found a resource group, Diabetes Network. And then this fantastic person, Jim Josephek, who was the founder of the Diabetes Network. And he just leaned in on me and said, Ish, this is what you need. You got this. Own it. You can make it. are you doing this? And he just became a real good resource for me. And then I'm partnering with him to lead the community today. And I share that story for two reasons. One, to advocate that you be your own advocate and an active participant in your community, but also to encourage people to be resilient. Even in the face, listen, I have faced setbacks, disappointment, so many things. And in spite of all of that, I still believe that there's a path to success. I still looking forward to the freedom to do with my life the way I want to live my life. So I'm just want to encourage people that no matter the obstacles, keep going.
Well, Iaishia, I really like to commend you for sharing that story because I know it's a difficult one. I know you shared it publicly on Good Morning America. You were on talking about this topic because I think so many people can benefit from it. The studies are out there, right, that folks in the African American community, when they do visit their healthcare providers, for whatever reasons, don't receive the same level of care. There's a bias for even pain thresholds. There's a lot of studies around that. So the fact that you're out there advocating and informing people around this topic, I think is a testament to your mother. It's a testament to, you said when you were looking to go to, is it Douglas at
Yes.
Rutgers, that provided you with the leadership skills, not just as a woman, but as a person. I think this is just an example of how that is all coming to be. So I appreciate you. I really appreciate you sharing this story with us.
Thank you, John. And I share the story, as you said, to shine a light on the issues that we face, Black people face in healthcare, but to encourage people to be their own advocate, to show up for themselves.
Yep.
And hopefully my story will help someone else avoid the pain and the loss that my husband and I experienced when we lost our daughter, because that was an experience that I thought, well, this is it for me because this is rough. But I continued on.
Yep. So what an amazing journey. You know, we've been talking for over an hour.
Oh, wow. That went by pretty quick.
It goes by quick, right? So what I like to do at the end of these is to reflect back so that we can think about the main turning points and influences that helped you on your path to achieve the success that you currently have, so that you've been able to be where you are today. So I've got a list of 5. I'll give you a template first, and then let me know if I'm missing anything, right? So number 1 on my list, from what I heard from you, you had a determined mother who provided you with values and a goal that we're getting out of these projects. And the way we're going to get out of these projects is through education. Number 2, she had the foresight. She had a plan to get you into Martin Luther King school. And there you then had teachers that provided you with a role model, again, providing you with some goals. Number 3, you had, I call him the Jamaican angel at Eastside High, right? Who gave that lesson that you are and can become who you hang out with, right? So be careful who you hang out with. We can't forget about Mr. Moody at the rec program, who also provided you with positive influence. Obviously, we want to give a shout out to Jonathan Rosenberg and Cisco to support you when, times were rough. A lot of companies, aren't, and individuals, don't take that extra step to support their folks. And the last thing, it's on you, right? You had this inner desire to take advantage of opportunities as they were presented to you. And I added to the list when you just told your story about resilience. You showed resilience when faced with that D in Rutgers, when faced with the health challenges that you had. that you're like, look, I'll just get a plan together and we'll continue to move forward. So that was my list. Do you think I'm missing anything?
I think you have a pretty good list. I would just add my faith in God.
Yes.
Because none of this would be possible if not for my faith in God. Because, I mean, I've had some rough times, but it's only through God's grace and mercy that I'm here.
Wow. I think that's a powerful way to wrap up our discussion, right? Your faith in God. Because without him, none of this would have been possible, right? So I'd like to thank you, Iaishia, for participating today. That's the story of Iaishia Smith. What I'm learning from these inspiring stories is all about human stories is that none of our journeys are traveled alone. There's a lot of support along the way, whether it be individuals, organizations, sometimes a little bit of luck. And as I've said on previous podcasts, that whole thing about pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, that's a myth. It can't be done alone. It requires the tenacity of individuals who want to succeed. So thanks for listening. I hope you were able to get something out of this conversation that you can use in your life and inspire you to help someone else in theirs. Iaishia, thanks again for participating.
Thank you so much, Jordan, for having me.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.